everyone, and welcome to another episode of DEM Munch, where we bring you inspiring conversations with experts driving diversity, equity, and inclusion across various fields. Today, we are honored to have with us Dr. Anaga Sarpotdar, a seasoned expert with over 20 years of experience in gender justice. Dr. Sarpotdar holds a PhD from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences and has been a trusted consultant on workplace sexual harassment since 2005. She works as an external member on internal committees across industries and serves as a chairperson of the local committee in Mumbai under the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act, POSH Act 2013. Known for her practical and insightful approach, she has also collaborated with UN Women India to support internal committees nationwide. Dr. Sarpotdar, it's such a pleasure to have with us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pallavi, for inviting me. I'm happy to be part of this discussion.
Yeah. Uh, I've been wanting to meet you for so long. You're such a well-known name in this field. Yeah. So, can we start, Anagaji?
Yes.
Uh, Let me now ask you first question. Yeah, let us just dive right in. So, in your extensive experience, what are some common misunderstandings about POSH compliance that you often come across in organizations?
I think the first thing that I will say here is that there is no seriousness about this particular issue. A lot of people continue to believe that this particular problem or this particular issue is exaggerated, and it is not happening as much as it is talked about. There is also a feeling that it will not happen in my organization, and it happens somewhere else, and we don't know where that else is, but my observation that it happens everywhere. But that misconception is there that we are a family, and we are a, we are, the culture of our organization is good, and it will not happen here because we treat everyone properly, and we are a healthy organization. So that is one misconception, that it will not happen with us. The second thing that I see is that, as I said, there is no seriousness about this particular issue, and therefore, all the activities that are done as part of prevention of sexual harassment are just seen as a tick mark kind of an activity. That I just want to do a session, and I do it. I use an online module without even checking whether that online module is the content is legally correct, whether whether that session is initiating any interaction, because usually online modules will not have any interaction. So
Mm,
then what happens to the questions that employees may have, which are not addressed by that content?
mm,
So this whole attitude of tick mark, and just doing a formality is causing a lot of issues, a lot of problems. And as I, the example that I just gave of using online content without even checking its veracity, without checking whether it is legally correct, whether it is addressing the Indian scenario, all that is there. Other than that, I also see that the internal committees are not empowered,
mm,
because it is just a tick mark activity. And sometimes the internal committee members may not be aware that the role that they play under this act, or the responsibilities that are assigned to them under this act. So it is all because this initiative is not taken seriously. Also, the appointment of external members is a problem, because any person
mm,
who just says that I can become an external member is appointed as an external member without even ascertaining whether that person has any body of work.
mm,
So these are some of the So basically, the misconception is that the issue is not serious, and
Mm.
all these malpractices are basically springing from that misconception.
Yes, you talked about this online modules without checking, right? And in fact, here I would like to share an experience. There are certain organizations who have gender neutral POSH policy. They say they have gender neutral POSH policy, and they want us to conduct awareness sessions as per those gender neutral POSH policies. So when we actually go through the POSH policy, we understand that uh, by and large, okay, the spirit of POSH Act 2013 is there, but when we look at their SOPs and the timelines, yeah, after that we have to tell them that see these do not apply to cisgender males, and and then they're like, no, 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 it is for everybody. I said, see, if we are going to, we are going to do a session, and if we go as per your POSH policy, and if we mix the POSH Act 2013 with your policy, your people are going to think, especially the men in your organization are going to think that it is applicable to them also. Yeah. And then when we say that as a part of action that you can go to police, they cannot go to police. I said, so there are, but then they are like, no, no, you do it as you want. So what is your take on this gender neutral POSH policy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say the first thing is that most anti-sexual harassment policies or POSH policies that I get to see are a copy paste of the act. That
Exactly.
is the biggest problem. Now we have to understand that if there is a full-fledged act in place, it is a law of the land. You do not need to copy paste it as your policy. Basically, an anti-sexual harassment policy needs to address issues which are not addressed by the act, or the act is silent, or there are certain gray areas, or where you need to customize as per your business. The act is there, but then there are certain areas within the act where you may need to customize. So a policy should ideally address all these areas, the gray areas, the silent areas, the areas which need customization. So that is the first thing which I see as far as policies are concerned. Now, after 10 years of this act, I would say that maybe we can consider having separate policies. The reason is that if you have one policy for everyone, that is women, men, transgender persons, intersex persons, there could be some confusion with respect to the reporting mechanism, with respect to the interim reliefs, etc. So I think when it comes to women, the policy need not be a copy paste of the act, but as I said, the policy can address all the the missing links in the act, and can say that this policy is in sync with the law. As far as policy for men and maybe other transgender persons, intersex persons, persons who may not ascribe to any one particular gender identity, there has to be a separate policy which then talks about the mechanism, because we know that the internal committee that is constituted as per the workplace sexual harassment law does not have the power to conduct inquiry in complaints reported by individuals other than women. So then what is the redress mechanism? Is there going to be a special committee? Is the HR team going to look at it? What is the redress mechanism? Also, what about other reliefs? So if a male is complaining and the male wants transfer pending inquiry, or but if the male wants to be on leave from work, then what is the organization stand on these reliefs? Because these are provided to women under the act. So the organization in that special policy has to clarify also the procedure. See, because as per the law, we follow procedure as per principles of natural justice. But then when it comes to individuals other than women, what is the procedure that we are going to follow? That procedure also needs to be laid down in that policy. So at this point in time, I would recommend a separate policy for men. Maybe if the organization is proactive enough, they can have a separate policy for transgender persons and intersex persons. So if you have separate policies, then you can actually address specific issues to that group
Correct,
also.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, but I'm not against expanding the scope of the initiative, because I believe that every person who is employed should have an avenue to complain. So if the law is not providing avenue to men and transgender persons and intersex persons, then a special policy needs to be in place, or the code of conduct of company code of conduct needs to specify uh, that what is going to be the entire modus operandi when it comes to dealing with complaints from individuals other than women.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But then are we expecting any kind of amendment in the original act
Oh, I don't think
regarding
so.
this?
No, because recently I was part of a group
Hmm.
which sent recommendations to Government of India,
Hmm.
which was formed by an international organization.
Hmm.
And uh, so we all of us were firmly of the opinion that uh, at the moment we are not
Hmm.
in a situation where we can ask for gender neutrality of the act, because if you look at the various indicators,
Hmm.
the gender equality indicators, there is no equality. Women are
Absolutely.
lagging behind in so many indicators. I think
Hmm.
for the law to become gender neutral, I think the equality has to be achieved in all other indicators. The law is the last indicator. So I don't think that socially we are in that place right now. If you look at cases like Kolkata,
Hmm.
if you look at the HEMA committee report, which was released by the government of Kerala
Hmm.
recently, that HEMA committee report is showing that sexual harassment is rampant in the Malayalam film industry. And
Absolutely.
after HEMA committee report came, there were similar discussions in the Tamil industry, in Kannada, in
Hmm.
Bengali, in Telugu, and everywhere women are saying that sexual harassment is rampant. So I don't think any kind of amendment can be suggested at the moment.
Okay. I'm glad, that has been made clear because there's always a talk about it. Okay, but and what a complete and comprehensive answer. Great. Um, so let us just move on to something else altogether. And
Yeah.
what I have observed is that most of the organizations just believe in ticking the legal boxes. Okay, it is just a tick mark exercise, the compliance. How is it that they can create a workplace culture that is truly inclusive and respectful? And what role does leadership play in this transformation?
I think first, uh, for this attitude of tick marking and just formality,
Mm.
compliance for the sake of formality, if this attitude has to go, I mean, it will go only when the employers will acknowledge the seriousness of this issue.
Mm.
Because, as I said earlier, most
Mm.
employers refuse to acknowledge that complaints are getting reported, and they also refuse to acknowledge that in their organization also complaint can be reported anytime.
Mm.
uh, I know many organizations in the city of Greater Mumbai
Mm.
where no complaints are reported for years together.
Mm.
Like, I've been with committees for many years, and there are no complaints at all for past say 10 years.
Mm.
Now this is an indication that
Mm.
something is wrong.
Mm.
It cannot be that there are absolutely no incidents of sexual harassment.
Mm.
Either the incidents are not getting reported because
Mm.
women don't know where to report, or they
Mm.
have no faith in the IC,
Mm.
or they may not know what is sexual harassment. So,
Mm.
all of this is a problem, and all of this is coming from that tick mark attitude. So I think that attitude needs to go, and people need to acknowledge that this is a serious issue. This is a workplace issue. This is not just women's issue. This is a workplace issue, and the employer is responsible for creating a separate workplace. I think that understanding has still not percolated.
I mean, we have observed, yeah, we have observed that employers are not even ready to sit in the awareness sessions.
Yeah, that is because they think it is unnecessary.
Hmm.
In fact, they may also believe that this is a Western concept. This is all imported from the West. This is not Indian. The Indian culture, there is no sexual harassment. So they may harbor such beliefs which are unrealistic. If you see the reporting of sexual harassment, if you see the numbers, then you know that these beliefs are unrealistic. And women in India, working women in India across sectors, unorganized, organized, self-employed, gig workers, everybody is facing sexual harassment and they are reporting it. So I think this attitude needs to go, that it will not happen here, and it is exaggerated. And then the important thing which comes is the budget, because what I see big organizations, they may be government, they may be public sector or private sector, they may be allocating certain amount of funds, but if you look at the medium sized and the small companies and unorganized sector, there is absolutely no allocation of budget for awareness sessions. There is no allocation of budget for paying the external member. So there is an expectation that the external member should work voluntarily or should be, paid minimum, which I think is unfair to the external members that are appointed on these internal committees, because external member plays a very important role in the committee. The external member is actually guiding the committee, driving inquiries, conducting sessions, having a dialogue with the employer. So I think budget is a very important issue here, for making a workplace safe. Because if there is budget, then there will be different activities that will be carried out. The content will be created. The money will be given. The funds will be allocated for all these activities. So I think that is very, very important.
Absolutely insightful. Budget is the main thing. If there is no money, then all the talk just remains a talk and nothing else. Yeah,
Yes.
that is correct. Okay. And then finally, what kind of small actions can both leaders and employees take if they want to build a safe and more respectful workplace? Because after all, this has to be a brick by brick exercise, right?
So I think I would just say that follow the act properly. I would not recommend anything fancy. See, as a country, we may be still, after 10 years, we may be still at the level of only compliance. And we may not be still ready to move to the best practices. Although I would suggest that now we should take a step further and move to best practices. Like, for example, if you have an internal committee, simple things like, if you're see, the act says that the names and contact details of internal committee have to be declared. So then, if you're declaring the names and contact details, put a small picture there, and put it up in different locations. I also see there is a lot of resistance on part of employers to display names and contact details of the IC, because they think that if everybody comes to know, then there may be a flurry of complaints and things like that, which is not true.
Yes.
Which is not true. There is also a lot of fear regarding false complaints, again, which I think is not true, because I have been dealing with complaints for about 20 years now, and I have not seen a single false complaint. There may be a little bit of exaggeration here and there, and some elements of something may be there which may be a little difficult or unreal, but completely false complaint I have not seen. So people still have it in their minds that these complaints are false, and we don't want to declare the names and contact details of the external members. So that is one. The other thing is, of course, the people who are appointed on ICs, I think, should be people who are interested, and not, you just don't put them, you just don't plant them in the IC, because if they are not interested, they will never, uh, they will never go as per, or they will never proceed as per the spirit of the act.
Correct.
And the IC, all of us know, is a quasi-judicial mechanism, and anything which is done or not done by the IC will have implications, legal implications for the company. Because if there is an appeal, the appeal will be in the industrial court, because industrial court is the appellate authority for Maharashtra state. So I think the people who are appointed on ICs need to be interested, empathetic, approachable. The external member that is chosen needs to have a body of work. Uh, Employers have to be careful in choosing external members, and not external members should not be chosen just because they have a law degree, or just because they have some humanities degree. They should be chosen after understanding what is the work they have been doing, how are they looking at this issue. So, these are some of the small steps. Also, I think the employers should not interfere in the IC functioning, because this is the grievance that I hear from many government organizations, that the employer is interfering in the IC functioning. So there should be no interference from the employer, from the HR team. I think the IC should be allowed to function independently, and there should be a trust that should be invested in the IC by the employer. And which is why I say that once you choose a good IC and a good external member, then you don't need to worry about how they are functioning, and you don't need to meddle in their affairs.
Yeah, and IC training is also important. Again, we have observed as people want to finish off IC trainings in 4 hours, and they have not had an IC training for last 10 years. And again, how do you finish in 4 hours? For
Yeah.
people who don't even have any idea about the act itself, forget about the SOPs or the best practices or the legalities. That is a very tall order.
I observed
Yeah.
that most ICs are not even aware that this is a disciplinary inquiry, and it has to be done in a particular manner. It is not something commonsensical. Most people think that it is just common sense. Call this one, call that one, talk to them, and say that whether it is whether the sexual harassment is proved or not proved. I think it is not like that. It is a disciplinary proceeding, and doesn't matter, even if it is private sector also, you need to follow a particular procedure. And of course, if it is a government organization, or a public sector, or an education institution, you have service rules. Then you need to maybe have another inquiry after the IC, because that is the 2021 judgment of the Supreme Court of India says that there has to be an inquiry as per service rules after the IC inquiry. So I think ICs need to be aware that they are doing a disciplinary inquiry, and not just some daily business of talking to people and just saying something, giving their opinion. It's not like that.
Yeah, even the confidentiality part, as it is actually very difficult to follow it in practice. And if you're not even aware of it, then the offense is compounded. How is it that they can actually manage to keep the confidentiality?
I think confidentiality needs to be understood contextually, because confidentiality also is, need to know basis. Because the IC needs to give information to the HR. Sometimes the IC needs to go back to the employer. So I think it is a tightrope walk. The other one of the practical suggestions is to get people to sign non-disclosure
Yes.
documents or agreements. Also, initiating strict action against IC members or chairpersons who are violating confidentiality. So, we should not let it go because
Hmm.
what I see in India, breach of confidentiality is not treated seriously. It is seen as something, it's okay, doesn't matter, happens.
Oh, yeah.
It should not be treated like that. You have to, communicate that if there is breach of confidentiality, you will be disqualified from the committee. So strict actions have to be initiated. Only then confidentiality will be maintained.
And the fines have to be actually be collected.
Actually implemented, yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, it will remain on paper. I mean, it was just wonderful talking to you.
Same
I
here.
mean, so many issues come to us, so many doubts get asked, and it was so wonderful having you here for sharing your expertise and practical insights with us. Yeah, it's been a really enlightening conversation, and I'm sure that our viewers have taken away valuable lessons on how to create safer and more inclusive workplaces. Yeah. So before we wrap up, is there a message you would like to leave with the audience?
I think the only message that I would like to give is what I said earlier, that, the bare minimum is to follow the act. And that is not difficult because the act is there in black and white. Just follow the act, and that is enough. I
And that
don't
is enough.
expect too much, but just follow the law of the land and be compliant with law of the land, not only just in letter but also in spirit.
Yes.
That is the message.
Thank you again, Dr. Sarpoddar, for being part of DEI Munch. And thank you to our viewers also. And please stay connected for more conversations with change makers in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.